What is up, everybody? Mark on the mic, Mr. Ian Klemm and Mr. Ryan Muckenhirn across from me today. Guys, I always love it when we're able to get together because, frankly, I find these discussions incredibly interesting. You know, in the Eminem song, Lose Yourself, he says you only get one shot. And I can only assume that he was talking about single-shot rifles, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We have a few on the table. I've got a bunch in my printouts. And, guys, let's fire away, but only one at a time. I do it for you.
I am shock and awe is the best.
I've got some shock and awe, and I'm not surprised with what Ian has on the table.
Never disappoints.
He exudes class,
Yep.
class. And
In a distant universe.
I don't even know how he finds these things.
This morning, I closed my eyes and I sort of reached in like this and said, single shot. And it turns out I grabbed 3 of them.
I love it.
What will happen? Parallel universe, distant though. Ian is going to have this bespoke classic firearms shop. Nice leather chairs. There's elephant tusks adorning rooms and things. I am going to sweep the floors to listen to Ian.
Oh, and then you'll solve equation.
No, like I'm just going to enjoy the place. There are cigars and pipes.
I like the theme you're going with. I want you to design it for me.
Deal.
That would be
Rich
good.
mahogany.
That would be good.
Actually, you know what? I don't even like mahogany. Everything is Bastogne walnut. Everything.
Yeah.
All the trim.
Guys, in the not too distant past, we did a podcast on stalking rifles. I feel like I'm seeing some similarities with what you have on the table here today. Ryan, you and I very recently just did a podcast on the resurgence, the resurrection of the TC Encore, and probably some other TC firearms as well. And now we're doing this podcast on single-shot rifles, which is kind of like a blend of both of these. I went on the old interweb today, though.
Yep.
Now, these single shots that I'm going to list off here are not, I'd say, running in the same vein as what Ian has here. But I was surprised in a way with the volume of just modern single-shot rifles that are available. I'm going to list a few here, okay?
Please,
Got them in my printouts. We've got the CVA Scout.
Shot them. They're wonderful.
The Henry single-barrel single-shot rifle. Looks very nice. A Winchester 1885 low-wall single-shot. A Cimarron 1885 high-wall single-shot. You got the Rossi LWC single-shot rifle with folding stock. Very tactical for a single shot. It's got a rail on it.
Yep.
I'm trying to think. Got some
CVA
some
Scouts.
duplicates. Got a Chiappa, little sharps.
There's a rifle I've actually always wanted.
This one here.
The little
mini
sharps.
Mini sharps.
Yeah.
What would you get it in?
What do you like about it?
I think just 22 LR.
Yeah.
Because I want to shoot like CB caps at mini silhouette targets in my
little
backyard.
gallery rifle.
Yeah, correct.
Yep.
And I want a flip up sight, like a short range or mid range tool type, and I want to sit back there with the barrel between my deck rails on sticks, and I want to knock over chickens, pigs, and rams.
Yeah.
I think that sounds great. I was going to say that sounds like something you do from your deck, maybe smoking a cigar. I know how you like to do that. Nice summer night.
Yeah.
One-eyed dog, yep.
You know what else, though? 22 Hornet in the Little Sharps, I think would be the finest turkey rifle a man could own.
Limit yourself to head neck type. Yep.
Turkey rifle.
Yeah. So there's an allowance that I have
Blasphemy.
for that. No. Hear me out. A single shot rifle, just its ownership and use of, allows for things that might be considered taboo to be okay. Because at a time, that was the acceptable means of take.
And it's still permitted in certain states, like Virginia.
A 22 Hornet, a spectacular turkey round. Well matched for the game weight and durability.
Then are you thinking game weight like body shot?
No,
headshot.
Yeah, headshot.
Yeah, that's sporting. Yeah, gosh, I think you said West Virginia. You said
I know Virginia for sure. I'm not sure about West Virginia.
South Dakota, Texas. I think you can. There's a handful of states out there. We got the Chiapa Little Badger single shot. That's a Jim special. Right
Yeah,
there.
didn't Jim have a Chiapa?
Yeah, he's got that thing. It's pretty cool little compact gun to keep around.
Smattering of Sharps pattern rifles.
Yes, we got
it's an interesting
some Pedersolis. This is the Mississippi rolling block single shot. It just kind of goes on and on.
Way more than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, the Pedersoli, if I'm saying that right, Tascosa Sharps long range single shot. And then here, I'll stop here. But again, so you've got this like classic wood Sharps, and then you've got the Cricket precision single shot youth rifle with scope,
which looks like an AI.
It does.
Yeah.
That might be a rendering. I don't know.
What's cool about this is in today's day and age, you are branched into two distinct categories: modern and even edging into tactical, or simply old school.
Right.
And thematically, like Sharps, Remington patterns, or Browning 1885s.
Reproductions for nostalgia.
Yep.
I mean, I'll say here, this CVA Scout, the first one, retail $299.99. But even when I got into some of these more wood-stocked, classic designs, I guess I'll say, but like, a modern rendition of a classic, like $2,000 and change was about the upper end of the spectrum. So it's kind of interesting there.
To Shiloh and have him build a rifle.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you guys like about single shots?
Go ahead.
This is a simple question that's hard to articulate.
This is why I defer.
I know. I wanted you to go first because I needed time to let it percolate in my head. It's hard to get across. Okay, this is going to be very pulpy in delivery, but I'm just going to bullet list it. There's something beautiful about simplicity in design. A single shot never fails to feed, which sounds stupid, but it just doesn't.
Now, it might when you're on that second shot, reaching for a cartridge and fumble the old ball.
Yeah.
But that's not the rifle's fault, though.
Right. There's something pretty elemental. This is a bit of a tangent, but this mental management thing I do when I'm competing. Instead of thinking of it like a 300 shot week-long tournament, I think of it as 300 single shot contests, or 300 single shot opportunities, or shots, and it helps me. I
just breaking it down to that granular.
Yep. It's sort of like, I think, basketball players might use the same type of mental technique when they're at the free throw line. They don't think about how far they're ahead or how far they're behind. They sort of eliminate all that circumstance and pressure, and they just say, well, this is my one opportunity. I'm just going to focus on this singular event. And it makes it very kind of pure, okay, this is my shot. I'm not going to think of it as something I have to rush because I've got another one, right behind it, or I think there's times and places for not making a perfect shot. If the opportunity calls for it, the circumstances call for it. Double rifles are kind of fun in those circumstances. But most of my hunting, I get the most satisfaction out of, and even target shooting, out of concentrating on one single ballistic event and trying to perfect it. How close can I get that projectile to where I want it to hit? And very deliberate, type shooting in that regard. And then the more practical, physical anatomy type aspects, I like short, compact rifles. I like efficiency in cartridges. I like efficiency in rifles. So if I can get a 24-inch barrel to look and feel and carry and handle like a 20-inch barrel bolt gun, that's awesome to me. It's more performance in a smaller package. And then I think I'll throw one more thing in there. The first centerfire rifle I ever shot was my dad's number one. And so I've got this implicit bias, I know, but I like the mechanica of single shot systems, single shot actions. I like I feel like I should have been born and lived, 100 years ago, because it's that sort of artistry in designing a single movement, like the drop of an under lever or the drop of a side lever, that does multiple functions, clears the breech, extracts around, sometimes ejects around, cocks a mainspring, sets a cocking indicator, and then that single motion of, closing a breech to finish chambering the round and sometimes finish cocking the mainspring. It's very satisfying, especially when it's well executed. If it's well manufactured, well designed, with a clever design, then it's just so satisfying to use and operate. That's all those things kind of together is why I like single shots so well.
If you remember Billy Madison, when Billy's on stage with a clarinet,
He's good.
Yeah, he's good.
Ryan? Is that when you just kind of go what he said?
Yeah, I think so. Big part of it for me too is there's a romance surrounding it. Like the first rifles that we had, by definition, were single shots, and it brings you back to kind of the origin of using a rifle, so to speak. And I think they're just so elegant. I like bolt action rifles of all kinds. I like some semi-auto rifles of some kinds, but there's no bolt, there's side plates, and there's this super abbreviated little receiver, and it's super cute. The whole package ends up being really lovely. And then you as Ian was talking about, you have this mindset that you enter. It's like you have one. So not that I'm counting on number 2, 3, 4, 5 in my magazine or however many are in there every time, but you have one. And it does put you into a different mind frame with it. And, like we talked about on the Stalking Rifle podcast, you're hunting the deer with the shot that you have. And I think that's cool. And I think, I do a lot of muzzleloading too, all of which are single shot rifles. And part of it is that's interesting to me, like to have the one.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say the same thing. There's something even that I find extremely satisfying of just the process of loading a single shot rifle. And I was going to bring up muzzleloaders because I get a very similar feeling when I, throw a charge down the pipe. And like you said, that this is the one, by and large. I mean, you can load these things pretty quick too. But you're like, this is the one, this is my shot. You hunt, like you said, it puts you in a different mindset, maybe a little bit different level of intentionality. And you're just like, everything is focused on this likely singular event that's going to happen, and you want to make it count. And I just think it's cool. And I do, there's, just like you said, the form factor, they're light, they're handy. You feel like you're just kind of carrying the stick throughout the woods. And I think while you're carrying it, like I said, that mindset that you're in is, I don't know, makes it neat.
It was what's nifty. Ian was talking about the mechanisms being well executed. Like the 1885 pattern rifle wasn't the first falling block. What was the Farquharson?
That's I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, but let's look at that time frame between, we'll just say 1865 and 1885, when the bulk of that engineering had occurred to end up with the product that we see today, largely unchanged.
Yeah.
There's been like some lawyered amenities that have been added to them, but for the most part, and we'll just give some credit to John Moses Browning. Like the 1885 is about as simple as it gets. And all those things that you're talking about with the single movement of the lever, the extraction process, the bringing the hammer back to cock.
Yes.
The charging of the whole mechanism, and then the simple closure. It is two movements. And for contrast, like on a bolt rifle, it doesn't seem like it's more, but there is more going on. Like there are different mechanisms at play. There's I think a more deliberate movement that has to occur.
Oh, at least a compound movement in 99% of them.
Yeah.
And then I think we can talk a little bit about, especially with early examples, comparative strength between single shots and repeaters. So think about early repeaters, right?
Yeah.
Think about Winchester 1873s.
Yeah.
very, clever design in the elevator and the toggle links and everything. But guess what's taking that bolt thrust?
Yeah.
Those toggle links. You don't have this massive breech block. Of course, it doesn't look very big, but when you actually calculate the percentage area that's accepting that rearward thrust from the cartridge, it's 5-6 times a modern bolt action, two-lug bolt action with that big breech block there. So now you've got something that's supremely strong.
Yeah.
And there was an advantage back then. Of course, we've got better lever action designs now and repeater designs now, but that was a real strength to them back then.
And to this day, like we'll pick on 4570 for example. Usually, you're seeing 3 sets of load data. You're seeing like trapdoor Springfield, modern lever, and then they usually call it Ruger number 1.
Yeah.
And I'll also lump like 1885 into that category as well, because they are so dumb strong, and they can take just huge abuse without worry of a receiver failure. Whereas like I would never take a hot 4570 load with a 405 hard cast or a 350 hard cast going north of $2,000 and change and put it in a trapdoor.
Yep, 100% agree.
I've got a bomb, and like whether it blows up or not, I guess that's up for debate. But it's not worth the risk, I think. And so they're so simple, so elegant. But in that, to your point, that simplicity and elegance in design makes for like as perfect a product as you can get and wildly durable.
And this Browning that you have here, which model is that one again?
Okay, so this is a interpretation of John Browning's design from 1885. This one is by Browning. 1999 would be the vintage of this, and it's a reproduction, let's say, of a Browning low wall, right?
Okay.
So Browning commissioned this from Moroku in Japan. So you've got, an interesting twist there. And besides, I took this one apart. I actually rebarreled it at one point just for fun and then returned it to original. But I noticed some differences from John's design in the fact that, the modern ones have like dual mainsprings, high tension coil springs instead of, the original springs that he used, things like that. So it's a little bit changed internals, but you still have, the exposed hammer. You can differentiate these falling blocks between, exposed hammer and hammerless, which is kind of a misnomer. The hammer's inside or the striker's inside the receiver, but this one's exposed. So, you can learn to live with the exposed hammer in terms of going to half cock and using that as a de facto safety. You can go to full cock without even thumbing the hammer if you want to, by knowing where the catch and the sear is. But just extremely smooth, well-machined. Moroku did a great job with these. It was only available this is actually in 260 Remington. 260 Remington, trying to find its way in the late 90s in that family of 308s. This would have been...
Never did.
Never really did, yeah.
This
would have been 3 years after its introduction. But to find one of these in 260 is actually a little bit rare. But it's been just an awesome rifle to hunt with. About 6 1/4 pounds or so. It's got a vintage Alaskan scope on there.
Yeah, where'd you find a new in box Alaskan, by the way?
Yeah, that took some looking.
Yeah,
but I think the steel tube and 7/8 diameter, it fits that gun really well.
Mark, you hit the mic.
I know. I should put my mic on the other side.
Octagon barrel. The interesting thing is that receiver, they have a barrel hanger. I don't know if your high wall's like that as well, but there's actually a protrusion from the receiver proper that allows this relatively thin forend to actually be a free-floating forend.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So the things shoot better than you'd think they would.
Oh, yeah. My high wall is an absolute hammer, and it's an irons gun. There's the ability and provision to put a modern scope on it using bases, but I just shoot it with a mid-range peep sight on the rear and a globe front, and if I'm doing my job, I have shot 1-inch groups at 100 yards with it.
Yeah.
If I'm on the ball. So super accurate rifles. They have a tremendous potential for that, and a lot of them do. Another example of a gun that I have is a H&R Ultra Slugger. Now, I've never fired that specific one, but I've shot a lot of those. This one happens to be a 20 gauge. They're capable of tremendous accuracy as well. I had a Ruger #1 that shot well once it got really hot.
Yeah.
Just shot in the wrong spot, so which is why I don't have a Ruger #1 anymore.
Yeah.
But they're cool guns.
Yep. Everything's scaled down. I mean, the barrel tenon, if you can see that, it's actually 7/8 of an inch instead of like a typical 1 inch.
Yeah.
So modern guns that share that dimension are like, the Kimber Mountain Ascents. Modern metallurgy, it takes the 60 KSI chamber pressure just fine. But little touches like, double ball detents on the S lever so that when you do close that, it actually feels really nice and really positive.
From an aesthetic perspective, it gives me strong BLR vibes.
Yes. Yep. I mean, it's got the quintessential Browning, I call it the bowling ball finish, which I'm not a
How
huge...
did we all arrive at that?
I don't know. I need to take some rotten stone to it and cut it back a little bit. But
no.
I mean, it is what it is. That's how they were.
Yeah, I like it. I wouldn't change that. No way. That's a cool rifle, man.
Yeah. It'd be a fine anything rifle, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And like you said, it's cool that it's a 260.
Yeah. I mean, something that maybe isn't the most popular these days, but gosh, super, super capable. When my 13-year-old is ready, that would be an ideal whitetail rifle for him.
Spoil him, though.
Yeah, I know.
It would be, and that's something that I wanted to bring up from just the function and the operation of a single shot rifle. I mean, that is a great youth rifle. I mean, from the form factor, like lightweight, slender, easy to carry.
Yeah.
But also, like, I guess every gun is this way, but it's loaded or it's not, and then you have the intentionality of, like, if it's a hammer cock, there's just a lot built into the rifle that I think that it makes them fundamentally very safe, very intuitive.
Yeah. There aren't rounds hiding places where you wouldn't expect them. I agree.
Hold on. I want to bring up one more thing, Ian, because you mentioned it pre-podcast, and I was like, I wrote it down. I don't know what it is, but you were talking about shooting for accuracy and shooting postal matches.
Oh, so yeah, the neat thing about this rifle, I found two of these at the same time, right when I graduated undergrad, and one of them was in 260, which I kept for myself. The other one, 243 Winchester, that was Dad's rifle. So we basically had identical rifles, and I moved across the country, and we were trying to think of some way to keep shooting together, even though we weren't together. So came up with this idea to one-up each other through the mail. And so we each had our respective local clubs, mine in Virginia, his in Wisconsin. And I think he started off and he set the bar pretty low. I don't know if he had low expectations or what at the time. But we basically, I would keep developing my hand loads for this rifle until I could beat his 243 group, put it in the mail, send it back to him with a little bit of smack talk. And he not too long ago, just a few years ago, he gave me this kind of a neat memory book, a scrapbook really, that he had put all of those targets with all of our notes and the dates and everything. And so I can see the progression of how we chipped away at that group size, but we were competing against each other through the Postal Service that way.
As an aside, but related, so 243 at that point in time, I remember when 243 kind of got popular in what was early PRS or across the course or whatever you want to call it. And 260 was then, this is probably latter 2000s. But at that point, what are you shooting? Are you shooting like a flat base target? Are you shooting...
Back in the day,
Yeah.
I was all about ballistic tips when I could find them, and VMAXs,
Yep.
and that was like, we're talking 2000,
Late 90s, early 2000s,
2003, 2004.
Yeah.
That was like premier Winchester's combined technology, with the Molly coating on it. Those were high shelf bullets.
And this was before your common target bullets that people throw around in 6 and 6.5 millimeter stuff. There was no ELDM. There was no there was a handful of BTHP options out there in the 6 and 6.5 pallet.
Actually, I was stuck for a while. He was ribbing me and saying, "How come I haven't seen a target from you in 6-7 months?" And then I graduated
I'm
to
working on it, Dad.
Sierra Match King, 123 Match
Yeah.
King, and that kind of broke me underneath that
Yeah.
5/8 threshold or whatever it was.
And so it was 2 cartridges, I think, destined for success in that arena, but at that time hadn't been realized necessarily as premier options. Yeah, that's wild. And that was, you were saying, that was what really moved you into the competitive shooting side of things.
Yeah, I used to do small bore as a kid in a father-son league, and then, going to school, I sold all my guns to pay rent, and I had a big hiatus, and then getting back into that postal match thing, that was like, well, I remember I really liked to compete. So then I just started down the target rifle thing.
Yeah. That's wild. And it was an 1885.
It was an 1885,
Yeah.
built in 1999.
So here's a question. I used to rib Scott Parks about eventually aging to the point that he would become a bench rest shooter.
Yeah.
That's a bit of an ageist joke and a rib for our fellow bench rest fanatics. Do you age to the point that you become a BPCR
There's
shooter?
some 80-year-old dudes that took offense to that, right?
I think they'll know what I'm talking about.
I think it is BPCR, but I think there's there's a off ramp on the way there that is Schutzen.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of
I
course.
think I'm gonna camp out in that Schutzen nerdy club in my whatever.
I quite like that though. That's nice. That's nice.
All right, question 2
Yeah.
or 17. I don't know. What is Schutzen?
It's like a traditional continental style shooting, often offhand, 200 meters. Very practical, very hunting oriented, but to keep it faithful, there's some restrictions in terms of cast bullets and no gas checks and not necessarily straight well cartridges, but maybe exposed hammers might be a rule too. I'm not real read up on it, but I will be at some point.
You want to talk about a wild palette of rifles and designs that show up at matches like that. And when you get into those older Germanic single shots, heavily adorned stocks, crazy grip geometry,
palm rests.
Yeah, palm rests on them. I was just looking at a single shot contemporary still making 1875 pattern rifles and making palm rests, and these really classy looking palm rests, hand checkered, beautiful walnut, adorned metalwork up into the oh man,
oftentimes really tarted up martini actions, tilting block actions. Yeah.
And it's like everywhere you look, like you think PRS and NRL is very mainstream right now, but there are so many prongs to this plant that bring you down these wild avenues of shooting sports and contest types and arenas and competitors that at one point, like Schutzen was the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe that gave way to BPCR style competition, and maybe that gave way to cowboy stuff and Annie Oakley stuff, and maybe that gave way to the old combat matches. And
I mean, it really is interesting when it comes to competitive shooting disciplines. I mean, there are subsets of subsets of. I mean, it's just there is something for every. If you're into something, you can find it.
Yeah,
there's a culture behind shoots and fests, especially in Switzerland and Germany, where it's almost like a family type thing, and there is very good-natured competition for the first part of the day, and then very good-natured beer drinking and bread breaking with everyone afterwards.
Okay, I'll see you guys in the afternoon then.
Right?
What's cool though, what I think is ultimately the coolest part about it is this is all founded around the rifle and riflemanship and riflecraft. And I was having a conversation with a customer in Argentina yesterday who loves the podcast. More of a birder and an observer, but I've said this before. It's like, this is such a cool tool that we can connect with people in different equatorial boundaries of the country over international date lines. And there's a very similar theme that brings us all together in that. And those shoots and fests that you're talking about, think about what that was. there was likely a hunting party. There was likely we'll call it a militia. That's how they stayed sharp. That's how they stayed good. And that's how they stayed a community. It's things like that. And
there was cantonal pride. Like it would be like a state championship, but at this canton of Switzerland, and there would be, local businesses would put up prize money and it would all be sort of a fest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All around the rifle.
Well, and there's probably some value in a lot of other people outside of your community knowing
those guys are good.
Those boys over there can shoot.
Right.
Yeah. Look at the American long rifle movement, and then ultimately what that led us down to from a military standpoint and rifle technology, at that like rifling technology, which is super neat too. That's wild to think about. Yeah, our origins are far deeper rooted in firearms than I think a lot of people might realize. Yeah,
A lot of us are here because of
that's
firearms.
right.
Ready for another one?
I am. You mentioned heavily adorned a few minutes ago, Ian, and to me, like these next two that you have up here, like that's what I would consider that, but maybe you wouldn't. But they're beautiful.
Well, thanks. This is an effort put forth by Horst Blaser in the late 70s when he was still primarily designing for Blaser. This predates the Kiplovs that we talked about in the stalking rifle episode, primarily the K95. So this would be a true falling block design out of Blaser before they went to the K95. Some notable things about this: the receiver and all of its subcomponents are all precision cast stainless steel. Which is pretty rare to find in a firearm like this. It hints to the reason why they moved away from this design after a few years is that just super expensive to make. It's a great design. I think one of the best designs, in my opinion, in the last half of the 20th century for sure. So you see this little button on the tang here?
Yes.
It's where safety would normally be.
Yeah.
A tang safety. In this case, it's not. We talked about single shots being inherently safe, and the Germans, they always have like a penchant for extra safety, or not hunting necessarily with a loaded chamber and the potential energy behind the striker for that gun ready. So this is really interesting. This is a lock, and the receiver, you can see the mainspring falls with the block, which is kind of neat. The receiver is closed and locked, but not cocked while you hunt. So literally right before your shot, it's just a small but deliberate upsweep of the lever, just that last little 1/4 inch, which cocks the mainspring and lets you shoot. You end up not taking the shot with a cocked rifle. That unlock button up here unloads for you, which is pretty neat.
I mean, a very natural, subtle movement from likely the shooting position.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're like, yep, I'm ready to take that shot, click, and squeeze.
Yep, and you'll notice there is a cross-bolt safety, which almost at this point becomes redundant because totally safe right now because the mainspring is not cocked at all. But if you wanted to further make it safe, that cross-bolt safety will actually prevent you from completing that cocking operation. So it would be
it's
in
almost
that
kind
case.
of like a dual, which I don't think that's a bad idea. I like that. And I said squeeze. The edge guys would probably say you should have said press.
Oh, sure.
I still say squeeze.
I still say squeeze too. Okay,
Yeah.
God, I feel so much better.
It's common vernacular.
But once again, we're talking about very compact form factor. Your trigger face to the beginning of your breech, what is that, 7/8 of an inch difference between the two?
Maybe.
So now this gun has a 22-inch barrel, whatever the metric equivalent is.
It looks like a 16.
I know. It looks super, super short. And it's chambered in 25-06.
Yeah.
So completely capable. Does this rifle not scream antelope hunting to you?
It does, but it also screams on the left side, red stag.
Red stag, yep.
And then
What's over there?
roe deer.
Roe deer, yeah.
Yep.
So cool. And I love, even that, like, it's like it tells a story, right? You've got a a red stag standing over essentially a fallen red stag, either by, the hunter that took it, or it won the battle, and is that next generation of, red stag superiority. And I don't know, that's a neat rifle.
Octagon to round barrel, air attack swing mount for just quickly taking that scope off. The thing I want you guys to notice when you manipulate this one, though, is the smoothness of that action. And that's what I was trying to get at in your initial question, Mark, was what do I like about single-shot rifles? I think, when they're well-manufactured, I'm not walking through the woods with a piece of detachable bottom metal that sort of rattles from side to side. I can grab that thing with one hand, and I'm holding on to a nice piece of European walnut, in my hand, not, a cold piece of metal.
A rattly detachable box mag is that's one of my bugaboos.
Yeah.
I don't.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the octagonal portion of the barrel an oversleeve?
It is.
Yeah.
That's a good eye, Ryan. Yeah.
There is so much going into this. So like the engraving, for instance, very traditional German oak leaf, Austrian or Germanic oak leaf. The animals, the anatomy is always good on them, except for ducks. They don't do ducks and pheasants worth a
Ducks
damn.
look like this weird cartoonish thing. I don't know why.
Yeah. My hunting partner calls them frucks. It's a mix of pheasant and duck.
Okay.
Because you don't really know. Like the beaks aren't right.
Right.
They've got musculature that's hammered into the engraving, and then it's traditional cut engraving, and then there's stippling in there as well. Like that took a long time to sort out. The checkering is elegant, simple, lovely. Nonetheless, done by hand. Double rabbit cheek piece.
Yep.
This is completely adornment. This has no functionality whatsoever. Just adornment. Extra time that it taken to cut that in there, and to make those lines look good at the same depth, with the same radii, with everything. I mean,
it makes finishing the stock that much more laborious too, with those scallops.
And where I'm sad for American rifles is like, it seems as if this kind of embellishment has no place anymore. And for no good reason. And Mark, you were talking about telling a story, and like I'm reminded of people asking like, why do you like those old European rifles? Well, because they were like one of one a lot of times, or at least they were treated one of one by the craftsmen who were building them. You had your barrelman, you had your stockman, you had your engraver, you had your fitter, all these things, and they put so much into them to make a rifle.
Well, like you're talking about this stock, a lot of this stock is there or isn't there just for the sake of elegance.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is cool.
It's
beautiful.
Gun. These things
it's a work of art.
These things are hard to find.
They are, yeah. For those that are interested in this sort of thing, the model is BL821. There was an 820, an 821, and maybe an 822. It's just different levels of finishing. This is the mid grade. But very compact, but capable rifle, and you get good working that action. It's not that slow to reload.
What year was it, you said?
I believe this one is 79.
I wonder, like 20...
It's quiet, too, when you bring that up.
You can,
and just
you can
feel
hold
that
it,
when you drop the block mark, it's just super smooth.
like sweep it down.
When you lower that lever, yep. Oh, you've locked it. There you go.
It's like it's on bearings.
Yeah.
I imagine 25-06 like probably wasn't a hot cartridge necessarily in Austria or Germany or anywhere at that time frame besides the U.S.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine that the intent was, I know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't see a lot of 25-06 talked about in European circles.
Yep, I agree. I have one more of these, and it's in 30-06.
Sure.
And that would sort of contribute to your point of it might have been marketed towards the U.S. market from an early upstart blazer, trying to make its name.
I can't wait until we run out of cartridges to talk about, because then we just go across the Atlantic, and then we have a whole.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm ready when you guys are wanting to talk about some of those metric
we'll really
ones.
up our European listenership
Yeah,
at
no
that
doubt.
point.
Okay, we'll stay in Europe for a bit. We'll just hop over to Austria. So this was made in 1966 by Ochar in Fairlock, Austria. And it's using the same system, the same patent by Arturo Hiren of that 1903 Nagel and Menz that I brought in for the stalking rifle episode. It's scaled up ever so slightly. That little guy was 8x40, 8x48 rimmed Sauer, and this is meant for a little bit more powerful cartridge. And I'm going to show you the cartridge. It actually has a 3-round magazine.
I was wondering, is that the cartridge holder
in the buttstock? And before I show it to you, I'm going to preface this with its name. You know, when people are trying to be satirical or a little bit funny in referencing like a new Magnum cartridge, they'll give it some, name like 6.5 McLeod Boomer or something like that. So this is the real name of the cartridge, but it's going to sound like that, right? So this is the 7x75 rimmed Super Express Vomhoff.
Yeah.
That's what the cartridge is. And that's what it looks like. Oh, dear.
Find yourself printing of cartridges of the world. I think it's in there.
Is it?
I think.
It's a rare bird for sure. I mean, it's ridiculously long. This thing, the brass itself is 3 inches before you get into the overall cartridge length.
It looks like the model rockets I used to do as a kid.
Yes. Yep. But funny enough, when you boil it down, cartridge capacity and pressure rating and everything, it basically equals a 7 PRC today. But this thing was developed in 1958.
There is just enough room on the case head to get some text on there.
Yeah.
So, parent case, I assume 74R.
It's this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, 74R.
Yeah.
Yep. So what happens, Ryan, is when they shoulder it and neck it down, they gain 1 millimeter.
Yep.
So that's where you get the 75.
Yeah. And these bullets, you educated me that cutting band.
Yeah. So this is a Willem Brennecke TIG design, I believe they call it, and it's an acronym that's like
I can't remember what it is now. CB.
I want to say
CB?
Like tornado something, but basically they were pretty avant-garde with their design in terminal ballistics. So, Mark, what we're talking about is this little cutting ring on the front. That's actually designed for bloodletting on your entrance hole, not necessarily, just concentrating on the exit hole for tracking. So they want to cut a round hole instead of windowing or penciling with a smooth ogive bullet through on your entrance hole, which is interesting enough as it is. But then it gets really interesting when you look on the cross section of this bullet. It's got 2 cores. So it's got a comparatively soft lead core up front. Mm-hmm. And then it's got a much harder lead core, two different installations with what we'd consider a retention band, like interlock type feature.
Sure. Yep.
To hold that bottom core in. And then where the boat tail would be is like a conical feature going down to nearly a point, if I'm not mistaken.
I imagine this is not a bullet you hop on Midway USA and click on reloading supplies. And
funny enough, I think they're still offered.
No way.
RWS and some people might be licensing that design.
So
have you shot a critter with this?
No, nope.
I would just be curious, is it theory? Has the theory been proven?
Let me tell you, my hunting partner, 7x65R last year, pronghorn antelope. And so he was shooting S&B. 765 has the same style of bullet with that cutting band on there. And we were talking about that cutting band. And so he makes a spectacular shot on this pronghorn. And upon examination, holy crap, it works.
Really?
Yeah, it's like you took
a wad cutter?
Yeah, like you took a laser and just went through the hide.
Wow.
And like the pronghorn's probably like the perfect analog to evaluate that with, because they have this very fluffy but kind of bristly fur that's also fragile, and it breaks really clean.
Sure.
And I'm telling you, it is like an excision that goes through there.
Wow.
And we both looked at that thing and we're like, huh. And the hair at the on the entrance side of the bullet laying on the ground.
Yeah.
to help facilitate the start of tracking. So where did we hit this thing? Well, here's the first hair. I mean, it was right there.
A lot of times that hide and hair gets penciled through with the entrance, and it sort of acts like a clotting agent.
It's as if you took an Arelco shaver and just went on the side of that thing and it was like, well, by gosh.
I recovered a bullet from a bear just this last week, Ryan, that had a big string of or tuft of bloody wet hair connected to it.
Yeah.
And so
which actually is something, and maybe it's just the nature of a bear with its long hair like that, but I don't think I've ever really recovered a bullet with hair on it before.
Sure.
Or kind of stuck into it, if you will.
Look at that tip off.
But the Sewell tip-off mount, But when you get down to it, you've got a lot of ballistic capability here in a rifle that, what does that weigh, Ryan? Maybe 6 pounds?
Perhaps.
And it's not, it's a thin barrel, full rib.
Man.
But no dimension anywhere that it doesn't need to be. A nice honeyed piece of European walnut.
All screws are fore and aft, as they should be.
Yep. But I mean, jeweling of the the internals too. They took pride in making these.
What a lovely little gun.
That little trap door in the buttstock though to hold cartridges, like it just gives you peace of mind no matter how many you have in your pocket or your bino harness or whatever. You always got 3 more.
Exactly. You're not going to be stuck on a mountainside with all out of ammo. And the only modernization of the Huron system by the time we get to 1966 here is the addition of this external safety. So the original, just past the turn of the century, didn't have that safety otherwise, and I believe the metallurgy is quite different. That might be a Dural type frame by the look of the finish. I'm not positive on that.
And this one has a chamois adorned on its right side.
And another red stag on the other. Man, that's cool.
So an example of a falling block, still compact and light and well made, but in a pretty capable.
This is a very
cartridge.
Serious cartridge.
Yep.
Can you? But you could load.
Yeah,
a different style of bullet.
I've been loading, to be honest, to 280 Remington type ballistics, and been very happy with it.
Because I imagine it's a handful.
Oh, it gets your attention.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that bullet weight?
177.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Let's go stock road here.
I think we kind of have to now, don't we? Ian, you can just loan us a bunch of your rifles and we'll just.
I'm game. I'd rather we do that than they just sit in the safe. So.
Oh my gosh.
What's
the trigger.
Look at
when we did the Stalking Rifles podcast, there was a rifle that you brought that had a very similar trigger. But can you go over that again? Because it is somewhat unique.
Yeah, it is peculiar. Under lever falling block, it's just the lever goes in the opposite direction of what's traditional. The lever is a set trigger. The trigger is a set trigger. So right now it's cocked, and if it were off safe, we'd be able to pull this front trigger here and experience the hunting weight, which is, normally pretty typical, 4 pound, pretty clean break, but 4 pound trigger. You would set it by pressing forward on the rear. Pressing on the rear trigger, and the two nest inside each other. And now it's set to a very light, sub-pound trigger.
Sub-pound.
Yeah. But the neat thing about that whole affair is, this is also a decocker. So this is just an extension of the internal hammer that hits the firing pin. So you can use that as, this is back to hunting weight, that's set weight, and then that's uncocked. So it's just a really clever, for back in its inception at the very turn of the 20th century, a neat way to go about a fire control.
Well, and it's a very, the visual cue of where you're at in those 3 stages is like you can just look down and see where you're at,
Yeah, yep. So you're decocked, and so think your hammer's forward.
Yep.
You push you're cocking your hammer back, and then you push again and you hit your set. That's cool. That is pretty neat.
So those are some examples of kind of the falling block realm of single shots. I was trying to think of, what rifle should I bring? And I realized that in terms of single shots, I've got a collection of single shot target rifles too, which are interesting. I mean, they're mostly bolt action, but technically, single shots. But I figured this is probably what you were getting at, is the hunting ones. So there's a couple.
We might have to bring those at some point, and we might actually just have to start a series called Firearms with Ian or something.
Ian's Obscura.
So menagerie.
Yeah, your competition guns are like your F-class guns, all single shot bolt guns.
Yep.
No provision for a magazine, not capable of insertion.
Correct. Yep. And the more interesting ones are once again out of Europe in some of their forward-thinking design, and those are single shots as well, meant for slightly different sports, 300-meter type international competition, which are also very finely made and insanely accurate. Speaking of accurate, there was a U.S. bench rest action manufacturer and competitor, Alan Hall, and he tried to answer the question, how accurate can we make a falling block action? Can it compete with bolt actions, traditional bolt actions, which usually dominate precision sports, accuracy sports? So this is his design of a falling block. Unique to it is it's a side lever, and it performs all the functions we talked about, extraction and cocking that mainspring, which is hidden inside that block. But the fact that he made it at this scale, and then the early adopters went on to win, like the Kelby Super Shoot, which is like a national level bench rest competition with this action. Why aren't people using it today? I think there were maybe 10 or 20 of them ever made. This is serial number 10. It's just expensive to make. Making something to this level of precision so that it can beat a bolt action. The repeatability of this block going into battery is equal to, if not better than, the rotational breech lugs of a bolt action, which is a lot more economical to make. Takes a lot of precision and know-how, and it just wasn't economically viable. But I sourced one a couple years ago, and I'm deciding what to make from it. So I think I showed Ryan some blanks of Turkish walnut that I got in the other day, and one of them is destined for this little guy, and I think right now he made all the extractors cut to the PPC rim diameter, so I think this might be a 6-arc, and that'll end up being my 6-arc rifle. But very cool little side lever falling block. Yeah, it'll end up being a nice light rifle.
That is crazy. Machined or EDM'd or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Yep.
I suppose once you enter that level of conversation, the wire comes in.
This is actually the safety.
Yeah, I was wondering, is that just a simple
Yep.
firing pin block safety?
Yep. It lets the hammer fall, but the firing pin does not protrude when you dry fire it.
That is neat. It's cool just sitting there by itself.
I know.
Just,
right?
Like knowing what it represents.
Paperweight.
It's a really cool paperweight. Some people have grenades.
This is the last one I wanted to show you guys. This is, in my opinion, the best single shot action ever made. So this was made by a gentleman named Martin Hagen, originally from Germany, immigrated to Cranbrook, British Columbia, passed away a couple years ago, unfortunately. But when I think of gun designers, you think of John Browning and those folks back then, and you kind of come up short when you think of modern, who's come up with a masterpiece in the last 50 years. But I believe that Martin Hagen did in his Hagen action. So the thing about this is everything works off of over-center camming action. So the mainspring rides here. It toggles on this wedge inside the frame, but that mainspring is aiding the opening of the action. And then when it toggles over center on the closing, It's actually aiding the closing of the action as well. So it results in the feel of, very positive. You know how Ruger number one, you'll throw the lever, and then it's just up to you to raise that lever and catch a little clasp back here. But it still has just a little bit of wiggle, a little bit of wobble. This one is biased in the closed position as it's closed, which is very neat. The other neat thing is there's absolutely no outside fasteners on this receiver. Hirn wasn't able to accomplish that. You see 3 or 4 fasteners on the outside of his receivers. Likewise, the Browning, you see pivot pins for the under lever. All of that is actually hidden inside the receiver proper or behind the stock line for the Hagen action. So it ends up being this beautiful canvas for engraving, color case hardening, whatever it might be. This is their medium size action, which is good up to 470 nitro.
No kidding.
Yeah, so extremely strong, extremely well fit. You have to be very deliberate when you're manipulating it because it's so well machined that you run the risk of cutting yourself, with the edges of the block. That they fit that mortise so closely.
It's like a self-opener, self-closer.
Yep.
But not like a Ruger Red Label.
Right.
Jeez, that's nifty.
So I've been mulling it over on what to build from it, and I think I'm arriving at a 450, 3¼ inch, so 450 Nitro Express, or a 375. The 375 would be more usable. It'd have more range, when I needed it. Either one.
Flanged or H&H?
That's a really good question. I could go either way. The H&H would be pretty practical. There's something about flanged cases with classic
Just seems
British
right.
Farquharsons,
Yeah.
I know.
Just seems right.
Yeah. Roller safety,
Yeah.
which is unique.
Cool, classy, has a good feel.
Yep.
It's beautiful. Like you said, I mean, it's just so clean.
Yep. And just the contouring of everything and the level of finish.
Have you taken it apart?
Not yet. But that's what I think of when I think of here's maybe the epitome of single shots. It would be this Hagen falling block.
Yeah, you're talking about the hidden fasteners, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like your opportunities are when you're finishing, it's like, okay, make the fastener, the pin, the screw, whatever, part of the, the intricate and ornate design on the outside. Give it, that high luster blue finish, or engrave the fastener head itself, or engrave the pin, or to your point, just have the whole thing just not have pins.
Yeah.
Disappear
Yeah.
entirely.
I don't mind seeing the fasteners myself, and sometimes when they're highlighted with that niter blue, they kind of it makes it look even more neat.
Yep.
But I think it's just a testament to the clever design.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, like looking at the pins you can remove and then what would come out with it. Oh, there's like 6 parts. And there they are.
Yep.
That's nifty. So 450 NE or 375
Yeah.
of some kind. That's cool.
I think I'm leaning towards the 450.
Yeah.
It suits the weight of the action, I think, real well.
Sure. You could load that down to 4570 and load it on up to pachyderm capable. And
Yep.
That you got to get
Everybody needs a pachyderm, right?
Yeah, we got to get you a proper cartridge belt.
Yeah, one of those neat culling belts.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Ian's out product testing. It's Cape Buffalo. No, that's lovely.
All super neat stuff. I mean, and to me, going back to where we started, and a few of these rifles in my printouts are, more classically designed and things like that, but some are very utilitarian, economical, bare bones, but they all share the fact that they're a single shot rifle, and they share some of the functionality.
Oh, simplicity in design.
Yeah.
Right? Very few moving parts, very simple operation, all capable of pretty astounding accuracy. And,
It's like back to basics. Sometimes when you get down a rabbit hole, whether it's cars or motorcycles or something, you think back to that single cylinder bike that you had that you learned how to ride on. And you're like, man, that was very enjoyable because, it was just so simple.
Yeah.
Well, and don't get me wrong. You'd be hard pressed to pull a bolt action rifle out of my hands for all the stuff that I do. But it does make oneself ask the question, what do I really need? How much do what do you really need to do the things that you want to do?
Good single shot rifle. My first gun was a single shot 20 gauge.
The first game animal I took was a rough grouse, Ryan. You would like that.
I do like that.
That was with a single shot 410.
Yep. I like that.
That was pretty deadly.
On the wing, too.
They can fly? You knew you could get it out of me.
Oh, yeah.
Cool, Ian. Well, thank you so much. I am always just so impressed with the depth and detail that you can speak to these things, and I'm fascinated by everything you always bring to the table. You as well, Ryan. Man, your guys' knowledge is always just so incredibly impressive, and every time we talk, I learn something or find out something super cool historically I otherwise would never have known about. So thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for indulging me.
Oh, man, it's always a pleasure. So did we cover everything? Is that it? We're good. All right. Well, thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this one as much as I did. It's really cool to always chat with you guys about these types of things. Are you out there? Are you guys shooting a single-shot rifle? Are you hunting a single-shot rifle? Are you hunting a rifle as fine as the ones that Ian brought here today? You say, by gall, I'm just going to go use it. Let us know. We want to hear what you have and what you're doing with it. Until next time, happy hunting and shooting. We'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.